Hello, everybody, and welcome back to 6 Plus Plus. I am your host, Tom, the very lowest of men. And today we've got tactical tips. It's Trading 101. Now, a question we got asked, either on the YouTube or the Discord, I forget, was could we do a video explaining how trading works and how to do it well? Now, trading is a very sort of staple part of playing 40k effectively. You'll hear loads of players talking about it, doing it well or doing it badly. And I think it's something a lot of people have a conception of, but a lot of newer players especially are still kind of finding their way and figuring out how to do it and what it looks like on the tabletop. So I'm going to try and explain that for you today. I've got a few different examples of how you can think about and use trading in your games. And particularly, I'm going to also comment on a couple of the types of unit you might want to use to apply for this. And ways in which you can do this effectively, what kinds of advantage this can get you in the game, and why you might want to do it. And hopefully that will equip you to go out there and trade better in your games. I'm going to take it back to basics first and just explain what we're even talking about, and then we'll get into 5 examples of trading that I have built up, and we can think a little bit about at the end about what bad trading looks like too. All right. Before we do that, do hit like and subscribe. Please leave us a comment if you're enjoying the content. We're trying to take things seriously this year. Any of your support means the world to us. If you want to sign up as a YouTube member and support us financially, that's a massive help too. And if you're interested in leveling up your game and taking on some 40k coaching and mentoring, I do that as well. So drop us a message in our Discord. There should be links in the description below. Alrighty, let's get into it. So thinking about trading first and foremost. What is trading? Well, ultimately, the word's the giveaway, right? Trading is exchanging resources to achieve a goal. Exchange is the key term here in 40k. 40k is in many ways like a sort of complex chess type game. You both have pieces. Ultimately, one player running out of pieces quicker than the other is going to give the other player a significant advantage. And one of the battles we're doing back and forth in a game of 40k is trying to get in a position where we have more points of our army left and they have less. Ultimately, that involves making things happen. And trading is an important way of forcing interaction and engagement between armies and forcing people to move their models and put them in different places. Ultimately, usually when you're trading a unit, you're going to lose it, although we will talk about some examples towards the end where you can anti-trade. But the goal here is simply to use one of your pieces, one of your units, in such a way that it achieves an important goal, and then you are happy for it to be lost, killed, or deleted, run over, melted, all those things by the opponent, which then is going to give you opportunities to respond and do other things in the game. I think thinking about your army in terms of trading and good or bad trades is a very useful way of starting to think about every unit you have as important, as serving a role, and thinking very specifically about what you're going to use your units for in games and identify when they're being used well or when they're being used badly. And that's also going to give you ins on your opponent, identifying what they're trying to do and how you can respond to it. So that's the simple definition. So I guess that begs the question of, well, how do we trade well? And there's a whole number of different techniques for this. I'm going to start with the basics and then get into some of the more complex ones. But when you are using a unit, putting it somewhere in the game, you want to be thinking about what it's achieving and what its role is. So we'll start with the most simple. This is number 1. So trading up in general. This is something 40k players are always trying to do. In a game of 40k, you are trading up if you are able to use a unit to destroy an opponent's unit that is ultimately more expensive. So a good trade might look like a small melee unit of yours flying into an enemy vehicle and managing to destroy it. That is a good trade. We want to create situations where positive trades happen. For example, if you both have 2 really dangerous combat bricks, you are trading up if you manage to create the situation where your combat brick gets the jump on theirs and destroys it. What you will often see in the early exchanges of 40k games is players will throw out smaller, cheaper units. And the goal with these is not to trade down. That is, you don't want to be doing things in the game that are going to cost you masses of your resources and put you in a difficult position later on in the game. So we use our sort of skirmishing units, lighter units to push out. You'll often see them fighting with each other on a flank or on an objective. The goal being we want to keep the trading level or even up. And then later on, when it comes to committing our bigger units, we want to be trying to trade those on positive terms, do bigger damage to our opponent's bigger units and avoid taking them to our own. So there's a real tussle and a back and forth here. And in 40k in general, if you're trading up, if you feel like you are killing more of their units or more expensive and important units and not losing your most expensive and most important. And there's a sort of tiered sort of deployment and sending out of resources to try and achieve this. There's a number of other ways in which this works, and we'll get into it now. But there's a lot of nuance to deploying and trading your units, but always trying to have an eye on trading up is a really useful start point. The next thing is to trade for points. Ultimately, if you are going to sacrifice and lose units, throw them out into dangerous places, you want to do so in a way that benefits you on the scoreboard. Ultimately, that's where the game of 40k is won. So it's okay to lose some units, especially cheaper ones, if they go out to score you secondaries, whether that's walking onto an objective to cleanse, walking into a very vulnerable area to score containment, whatever else it is, flipping an objective for extend battle lines. There are going to be times when we're happy to lose certain units as long as they are netting us a good number of points. This is even better if they are also denying or scoring primary for you. If you can keep your opponent's primary down and keep yours up, you're going to win the game. So throwing away and trading units to achieve that is often worthwhile. This is where little OC2 units come in really valuable. You think about things like, Drukhari Witches, for example. Throwing away a high OC unit that isn't that expensive can often then achieve you a big points deficit on the primary, denying their primary and scoring you cards at the same time. If you're able to do that, then that makes the exchange of resources that's taking place worthwhile. So when you're deciding whether to throw things out, you always want to be keeping an eye on whether that's going to benefit you on the scoreboard. Is it actually going to change their primary if you deny one objective? If it is, then it might well be worth doing. Is it going to combo with scoring you a card? Then it's even more worth doing. Ultimately, you only have so many uses of units in the game, so you always want to be weighing up and thinking about whether those are effectively trading for points in the game. If they're not, it may well be worth second guessing whether or not you want to put them out yet at all. Next up, and related, is another trading dimension, which is trading for space. You'll often see this in the very early exchanges of the game. So this is where a unit that you send out and sacrifice is going to block up a portion of the board, tie up the opponent, and stop them from moving out. This buys you board space, which can then mean that other units are following up safely, are able to secure objectives, and are able to be getting into position without the opponent counterattacking onto them. This kind of trade is often done by scout moving units or forward deploy units. You think about things like Admech infiltrators or the Beastmaster in Drukhari or Seekers in Demons, very quick units that are relatively cheap that are going to fly out, cause mayhem in the front lines, probably not kill things as such, but keep them busy and buy you time. If you have a good plan here for positioning it and using it in such a way that you can stop the opponent for a turn or two, then it may well be worth doing because you're going to buy yourself requisite space and time. But that's something you have to assess very carefully. If you fail to block the opponent off, or if you fail to protect the units coming up behind, then you've not successfully used this unit and it's ultimately been a bad trade. So it takes a bit of practice to use these kinds of units right, but I think you will see a lot of good players very readily trading certain assets in the early game to take up space on the board, screen out where things can deep strike, screen out where things can move, and deny the opponent space to play the game. In this sense, losing assets is worthwhile if you are also winning the war for space. This is something I've learned an awful lot playing GSC in recent times. That's another type, and a final type is baits trading. And this is something you will encounter against top players all the time. Good players and stronger players are always looking for very cheap, obnoxious units to put out in the early phases of a game that then in turn force the opponent to commit resources to deal with them. If the unit is cheap and tough, then that is really nice. You know, think about land speeders in previous editions, but now the Invader ATV. You put something like that out, your opponent has to commit something half decent to clear it. They're not simply going to fall over to some bolt guns or whatever else. You need actual genuine damage to shift a unit like that. I also like the example, bricks of grotesques. These are very tough for their points, right? So if you shove a grotesque brick out, whatever the opponent is sending to deal with that needs to be quite effective and potent at dealing damage. So the idea in a bait trade is you are sacrificing something, but you are calculating that whatever they are going to send is going to be better, more valuable, and more expensive than the unit that you sent. And what that means is once they've committed that unit to deal with yours, you in reply will then hit them with your much more dangerous, more heavy hitting units. And this is how you achieve that kind of trading up effect, right? It might look at first hand like sacrificing something, but you're going to get a leg up in the subsequent exchange. You give them 60 points, they have to commit 150 to deal with it, then you kill their 150 points. And if you can create those situations in several places on the board, you're going to get a significant leg up in terms of your resources in the early exchanges of the match. So a lot of trading is baiting. A lot of trading is about trying to draw out the best guns or the best melee the opponent has so that you can then reply and deal with it. And something that you often see newer players doing is very cheaply giving up their best units in reply to these early baits, right? If you suddenly send Lamatis and 10 Death Company to deal with, 5 Cabalites or whatever else it is, you've traded down substantially, because whatever replies against them is going to deal them significant damage, and you're losing a lot more points than they have sent. So trying to identify and manage baits and create baits of your own is a really important part of creating a very positive pattern of trading. You'll have those games where you always feel like whatever you're doing, you're playing into your opponent's hands. And very often it's because they've got you in a very canny sort of spiral of bait trading, where everything you're sending to deal with their resources is more valuable, and you're just gradually bleeding out on a material faster than they are. And the final one, and a recent one that's a phenomenon in 10th in particular, is the phenomenon of anti-trading. So in anti-trading, you are creating situations where a unit you've sent is actually either not going to die when your opponent tries to deal with it, or it's going to force massive engagement and take enemy units with them. So there's a number of things that do this. Fight first units can create these situations where they push out onto a point, kill a thing, but actually even to reply, the opponent then is going to get hit again. Fight on death units are very good at this. Again, I think of Grotesque, but there are many others. The opponent can't send a small unit to kill them because the fight on death might also kill their unit, so they then have to send even more resources. And the big one, of course, in 10th edition is the old 2-up stand back up again unit. So the Abominant, Fuegan, Urian Rakarth. Units like this, Hallowed Martyr's Sisters, where the characters can stand back up. Units like this create an anti-trade situation because the opponent can't commit one phase of a unit to deal with them. They either have to shoot and charge something in, or they're simply not going to retake the point or destroy the unit. So that's really nice at making hard choices for the opponent, forcing them to commit substantially more resources to deal with you, which in turn opens you up for a much bigger counterattack. So anti-trading is very much in vogue in 10th edition, and we see a lot of that now. But I think that covers all of the sort of fundamentals in terms of trading as you start thinking about how to apply it in a game. So if we're thinking about what good trading looks like, it involves you gradually getting an advantage in terms of the points units of destroyed enemy units, right? You want to get in a position where they are losing more valuable units than yours. You're using your cheaper things to draw out their expensive things and then get the jump on those. When you're trading badly, you are giving away very valuable or expensive units, and you're not gaining a significant advantage in terms of the points destroyed, in terms of your board presence, in terms of your scoreboard. And you'll often see players burn out because they push too much and too hard in the first couple of turns without really thinking about how that's going to last over the game, not thinking about how that's actually achieving anything on the scoreboard, and it's inviting too much reply and too much retaliation from the opponent. That typically is the game, guys. It's a very chess-like game these days. That is what people are trying to do. Obviously, there are various uninteractive tools in terms of lone ops, fire and fades, reactive moves. There's all sorts of tricks you can use to try and prevent trade situations from happening and make them even more risky for the opponent. Heroic intervention, command interrupt, setting these kinds of traps up can also help to avoid situations where you're just getting dunked in response by the opponent. But the fundamental sort of core of this is very much keeping an eye on the value of the things you're using, the value of the things your opponent is responding with, and the overall material balance on the board over the first few turns. Because if you're trending up, you're in a good spot. If you're trending down, it's looking more difficult, and you need to make sure, if you are, that you're at least gaining a significant points or board space advantage whilst you do so. It's very finely balanced. A lot of different armies play this exact balance of resources in different ways. I've always loved pure trading, I go, I kill you, I die, in reply type armies, but there are many that do it much more sneakily than that. And I hope that as you start to apply these lessons in your games, you will be able to understand and trade significantly more effectively. That's it for today's tactical tip. I really hope you've enjoyed it. I would love to make more of these, so if there's something you would like to see covered, please do drop us a message in the comments. If there are particular examples you want to see unpacked or expanded, I'm very happy to do that as well. Just let me know. Thanks so much for supporting 6++. Please do hit like and subscribe, leave us comments. We love all that good stuff. And if you want to support us as a YouTube member or come and get some coaching and mentoring, I'd be more than happy to work with you. Thanks so much. We'll see you again next time. Lowest of Men out. Bye-bye.